welcome back to another scrumptious episode of Legally Judgy. I'm Alexa.
And I'm Nicole.
Why are you laughing?
Why did you call our episode scrumptious?
Because we're scrumptious, and so is our show,
we are
obviously.
A snack.
Please tell me you had a scrumptious week.
We are snacks. I did have a scrumptious week. So this week, we obviously, very recently, we did our photo shoot.
We did.
Which was really actually difficult. I feel like I'm not meant to just smile and be posing on cue for hours at a time. I feel like.
My favorite thing about that photo shoot, you were like really smizing. You were like America's Next Top Model with it.
I practiced in the mirror for quite a bit.
Did
before.
you?
I was thinking of Tyra. I was like, smize, and then pose. No, it was hard. It was really hard. I feel like there was a point in my life where I thought that I wanted to be a model and an influencer and do all those things, but I actually hated it. First of all, I like to eat. Your man's likes a good meal.
Okay.
Second of all, it was awkward having people like walk by and stare and
I think that more than anything.
Looking over your shoulder 3 times and flipping your hair. It's just not my life.
Well, bless our photographer's heart. She had us walking in the middle of the street to get shots. And I hate any sort of crosswalking. Like my wife will be like, we got to cross the street. And I'm like, great. The signal light's a mile away. We're going to walk to that signal light.
Wow.
She'll just jaywalk. So that entire time, you can imagine, I had so much anxiety.
You were a little stressed out.
I was very stressed out.
A little stressed out, but I can't wait for us to be done going through the final pictures. We'll obviously show all you guys. But
America's Next Top Model season 2050.
Long story short, we are best behind the microphone.
Yeah, and we have podcast faces. We're good here.
Exactly. What's going on with you?
Nothing much. Still in quarantine. But I think the highlight of my week was actually talking to my mom.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love my mom. Hi, Mommy. She's very supportive of this podcast, but actually she doesn't realize it's a podcast. She calls it my blog. So
Close.
I think that's hilarious, right? And
Does she know that we're speaking and not writing?
I don't know that she knows what the difference between a podcast and a blog is.
Gotcha.
I think she just thinks like, oh, it's on my phone.
Okay.
I'm surprised. It's like an app to her. Like we're on her phone.
We're just there.
Which was actually funny. I've never told you, but you know how when we did our first intro episode and we uploaded it to Google Drive.
Yeah.
And then we shared that with a couple people.
Yeah.
So I had shared it with my parents.
Okay.
And they loved it, right? They were singing support of it. So I tell them, okay, Mom, Dad, we're on Apple Podcasts, right? They both have iPhones. And they go, okay, got it. We're going to start listening. I check in with them a couple weeks later. My mom calls me. She's like, sweetie, I can't find your videos. You sent me the link in my Gmail and I can't access your podcast. And I was like, Mom, it's in the Apple Podcast app. Remember I showed you it's the purple one? And she's like, no, mija, it's the Gmail. That's the link you sent me. I'm like, Mom, no,
it's just one.
The Google Drive, that was just the one episode before we published it to the world. We're on the platform now. So I end up FaceTiming her. And you love old people, the FaceTime is always like super zoomed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like my mom's left nostril. She's like, sweetie, where's the podcast?
Yeah.
And then my dad comes in, it's like his forehead. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, mija, let me help your mom. And it took like an hour, basically. But when they finally saw a cover art on a podcast, they were so happy.
Well, they're dialed in now. Sometimes you just have to put the training wheels on.
Now she's listening. She's out of order. She was like, I just listened to El Chapo. I'm like, great, fantastic. Then she's like, I just listened to Girardi Family Values. I'm like,
our second episode.
I don't know what's going on over there.
Shuffle. You shuffle podcasts? I don't know.
I'm going to watch tomorrow.
She may have figured it out.
She's like, sweetie, I love your blog on your G-Chat. Like, what, Mom? What are you talking about?
I love it. Well, people who don't need blogs or podcasts.
Yeah, anybody who's had any connection to the internet lately, I'm sure, has seen what has been going on with Lil Nas X and Nike and MSCHF, and there's just so much to unpack here. You want to bring it in? Tell us who is Lil Nas, who I guess I was pronouncing incorrectly this entire time too.
There was a couple days ahead. There were a couple days ahead of this. We were preparing for the episode, and Alexa was like, "So, what do you think about Lil Nas?" And I'm like, "Who the fuck is Lil Nas?" And I'm like, "Bro, have you ever heard of Nas? He's like a famous fucking rapper." And I really was like, "How long is it going to take until she figures this out?" And I just couldn't hold my tongue anymore.
Look, this guy is like 14 years old. I'm like 80 years old.
What does it have to do with it?
I'm not hip on it.
You don't know who Nas is?
I knew Nas, yeah, but not Lil Nas. I didn't know it was an homage to him until I started reading about him.
You're stressing me out. We're just going to move on.
So talk about Lil Nas X.
So Lil Nas X was born in 1999.
So young.
I know, he's truly a child. His real name is Montero Lamar Hill.
That's cute.
And so from what I understand, he grew up in a super religious home in Georgia, and I think kind of felt constrained creatively, artistically, sexually, etc. And so, you know, he's kind of taught from a young age that it's not okay to be gay, which comes in later. But before he gets big and becomes Lil Nas X, he basically spends a lot of time online kind of building an internet personality. And so I think, or allegedly, it hasn't been confirmed and he's kind of denied it. People think that he started this really big fan account for Nicki Minaj. Oh my God, now I'm saying the Instagram account.
Yeah,
it's like Nicki Minaj.
That's what it was called.
The Twitter is Nicki Minaj, but it's for Nicki Minaj.
There we go.
And so while he's running this account, I think people kind of speculated about who was behind it and what their intentions were and what kind of person they were. And so during this time, he continues to deny that he's gay quite a bit, but is just like the face, you know, behind the tweets at least.
He's got some strong Twitter fingers.
Of this account.
Right. And then he eventually makes it as a rapper and a songwriter with his country rap song, which is awesome, Old Town Road. Blew up on TikTok in 2019, and he just kills the charts with it. 19 weeks as #1 song on Billboard Hot 100. First time for this to happen since the original song, which he sampled from, debuted in 1958.
Crazy.
And then it also debuts on the Hot Country Songs chart at number 19, which I'm sure is especially huge for a black artist in country, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But Billboard actually later removed it, saying that they didn't have enough country elements to participate. Some people speculate that's because of racism and, you know, black people, blackness in country music. I don't know.
I mean, I do think that he kind of created a lane because there was that black, I can't remember her name, she's this black artist who, she's a female, she sung at the Grammys, but she does country music. And so since, I guess, Lil Nas X, it seems like she's been able to kind of find more of a lane for herself. And I mean, I said she was, you know, she sang on the Grammys, like that's obviously big, and she got nominated for some stuff. So I definitely think he, you know, broke some ground and paved the way kind of in that respect. But then I think, you know, later they kind of featured his song on smaller charts, claiming that they were testing it on the country markets, thinking, and they kind of said that it would be negligent not to look into it. And we think everything's about money, but we think this was also about money.
Yeah, I think they saw how big it was.
For sure.
And then they regretted their decision to take him off the charts, and then we're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll give this guy a chance.
Like they throw
like,
a
you
carrot.
just want money.
Right. Well, so then, to make it even bigger than it already was, basically in April of 2019, he ends up doing a remix of Old Town Road with Billy Ray Cyrus. And so in that same month, Lil Nas X breaks Drake's records for the most U.S. streams in 1 week with 143 million streams for that song just in a week. So it now has over 1.1 billion plays on Spotify alone.
It's crazy. Imagine.
Maybe this episode will do that. So annoying. It literally... Listen, I love him. I think that it's great that he's broken all these barriers, but after like the first week, I was like, who the fuck is like listening to this?
What is this?
And it became very clear that it was a lot of children who really loved like doing the dance and the TikToks and all the things. Yeah. But
we're old. We're too old for this. We're too old for this, okay? Not my cup of tea either. You know, and I'm not a country listener, I have to say. I like the hip hop. When he gets those beats in there, I'm like, okay.
Right.
But I'd never heard of this guy, really.
Yeah.
Before this. And then but hey, to each their own. I think it's amazing what he's doing and combining so many genres into one. Good for him.
And I think it's worth noting. So I definitely was like, why the fuck is Billy Ray Cyrus on the song with him? Because he's, as most people know, Miley Cyrus's dad. And I'm like, this all feels very random. Like, where did he come from? But apparently when they didn't let Lil Nas on the country list, he had at some point tweeted out just randomly that he wanted Billy Ray on the song. And so Billy decided that as a way to support Lil Nas X and hopefully get him on some of those country lists, that he would do the feature / remix.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But again,
I think it helped him. Honestly, I think it helped him gain some legitimacy. And it sucks that he needed that. But you have Billy Ray signing on. You can't help but be like, okay, let's give this guy a chance.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he was doing it on his own, but this didn't hurt. And then he wins a bunch of awards for the song. Grammys, MTV Awards, and he's the first LGBTQ person to be nominated and win in a lot of instances. Namely, the big ones, I think, are the CMAs, Country Music Awards, and the BET Awards. Again, country, rap, hip-hop, they have their own kind of history, but things that I think of, homophobia. So I think that's huge, as we'll get into shortly, but I think it's amazing. He's groundbreaking, regardless of what your thoughts are on his songs.
Right. I mean, he kind of crosses some genres, right? Because he ends up releasing a children's book called C is for Country. I have no idea what it's about. Would be very curious to know like what the content is for that book, but I thought it was at least kind of cool that, I mean, I'm very pro education, so if you turn your Old Town Road into like a literacy moment, then by all means, boo, go for it.
We should go to Barnes & Noble after and pick up a copy of C is for Country.
We'll get our hot chocolate and some snacks.
Yeah, I want to learn about the country.
In the aisles. On top of breaking boundaries, I think, and winning some of these awards, especially given, you know, what you kind of noted about, I think, things being associated with country and rap and hip hop being a bit homophobic in some ways. He ends up coming out in 2019 via this song called Closure, which I didn't hear the song a ton. I definitely listened to it. I don't remember it being like huge in the radio or anything, but I thought it was really courageous for him to come out in that way, especially given that the communities that he's really a part of and is trying to get into musically are not the most accepting of people being gay or just queer generally.
Yeah, I think being a queer Black man is next level queerness. That's something else, and I think it's amazing that he's doing that.
Yeah. I mean, and super, very unrelated to any of his music skills. I really appreciate his grade A trolling. I have been following him on Twitter for some time. I feel like, in my mind, Lil Nas X is playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers. And so he's thinking about like the long term and the messages that he's trying to get out, but he's also truly trolling people the entire fucking way.
Right.
And so you just can't, like, I think people will try to tweet at him and come at him for how he handles things and how he dresses, but like he grew up on this.
Right.
He grew up on Twitter. He grew up on Instagram, especially doing like the Nicki Minaj stuff. So like he's got the clips. He's gonna get you.
You stand no chance.
Just get out the fucking way.
Is what you're saying.
Get out of the way.
Right. And this leads us to his ultimate kind of fuck you, I think. He drops the music video for Montero, Call Me By Your Name. And it's a song, man. So generally the song's about the frustration of being closeted, the pain of loving someone who's still in the closet, sex, and jealousy of straight people who don't have to face bigotry for loving the opposite sex.
Right.
And this video, this music video is crazy. So
it's intense.
So we'll get into it a little bit. It's relevant here. So basically, music video shows him dressed as a fallen angel, and it culminates with him turning into a demon, and he rides a stripper pole down into hell, and he gives a lap dance to a CGI devil, kills him, steals the horns, and takes them for himself. So this is creating a lot of splashes right now.
Just a little bit of conversation around this.
Just a little bit. I think a lot of people, I'm like scratching myself right now.
You're stressed out.
It shows, for him, I think he's expressing sexual self-acceptance. And it's just a very queer video in general. I mean, he's dressed up in drag at some points. He's pretty sexual as he's sliding down a stripper pole into hell.
I mean, I think there's so much here. I think, like, there is some really kind of interesting historical elements. And so, like, on the dorkier side of things, I was reading a couple articles, and apparently, and I mean, as I kind of saw after I read these articles, it's packed with a lot of, like, Greco-Roman and medieval Christian motifs and messages from, like, Greek and Latin history. And so it seemed to me that he's trying to draw this connection between, like, ancient and modern day persecution by kind of having all of these messages in there. And so I really appreciated at least that, you know, a number of scholars kind of said that it was clearly really well researched. And there was a really strong attention to detail that even includes, like, the Garden of Eden. He's got the Colosseum. And he's got this descent into hell in an interesting way. And so I think besides just, like, the shock and awe of it all, I appreciated the historical kind of well-researched side of this, of the video.
He did his homework, basically.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's an homage to Call Me By Your Name, the movie.
Great movie.
Which is an amazing movie. Yeah. It was really good.
It was. I actually saw that movie in a theater full of, like, it was like a gay men event in where,
so it makes sense you were there.
It was I went with, like, some of my friends who were gay guys, and I was like, yeah, like, I'm down. I didn't know anything about this movie.
I wasn't sure if that's what you spend your free time doing, just
no, I
gay
mean,
men events.
I would compare it to seeing, like, I don't know, like a Black Panther and like a theater full of Black people. Just like the reactions were so on point. It was like, yes, girl, tell him about it. And I was like, okay, I'm so here for this. Thank you.
That's an exciting way to watch it.
Loved
I
it.
watched it on the couch with my wife, which is great, but I'm sure
I'm sure she had similar reactions.
Yeah, we both were like, oh my God, the peach.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so ultimately, this video is popping, for better or for worse. I think we're now at approximately 75 million views on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's trending, for better or for worse, and there's plenty of people who are up in arms about it, saying that he's worshiping the devil. Parents are saying it's inappropriate for their children, given that he got famous kind of catering to kids with Old Town Road.
And listen, I think there's something there. I mean, the wave to his success definitely came via Old Town Road, right? Because I think so many kids were doing the TikTok trends like we talked about. And I even believe at one point he was like going to schools and performing.
He was.
Which is how he was kind of getting this wave of attention and popularity. But I mean, in complete fairness to him, Old Town Road is also not super pure. Mm-hmm. If you listen and like even read the lyrics, he's talking about drinking lean, and cheating on his spouse, so
right.
or cheating on somebody. So I don't think that like that's not preaching like go to like stay in school and don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, the 6-year-old singing to this, like drinking lean, like no, it's not good. But that was like our childhood too, though. Listening to all this stuff, Genie in a Bottle. When I learned what that was about. Very different than what I thought it was. But there's some good news, right?
I mean, his dad was super sweet, and I think he said he's really proud of him and basically told him to live on his own terms. That's so cute. I think he got some good response. But to your point, there are people who are super pissed off. And my impression is that these people are not... They're not thinking about like what's happening and what's trying to be said. Mm-hmm. I would say that they're probably not attending too many museums in their free time. But I think if you take a step back away from
them uncultured.
I mean, listen, if you don't have any couth, then like that's not my problem. But so I think if you get past the images and look for the meaning and the symbolism besides like the historical things that I talked about,
past the stripper poles and the lap dances.
Yeah, if you get past those few elements, and also listen to the lyrics, I think that. It seems obvious to me as somebody who's maybe not obviously to some people, but I'm not a part of the LGBTQ community. So, like, I've only got my experience, which is obviously never going to come close to his in that regard.
You're a good ally.
Thank you. It seemed to me to be a commentary on how people who are queer and maybe even queer people of color are treated by religion. I mean, I definitely remember like hearing when I was a kid, people say like, "Oh, you're dancing with the devil." So like when I saw him dancing with Satan, I was like, "Oh,
like literally,
truly." I mean, it's like an illusion. It's definitely a tie to the things that you're told when you're Black and Christian about kind of flirting with the devil or dancing with the devil, and how I feel like sometimes Black Christians can be a bit more harsh and saying like you're going to go to hell for things that you do and talking about sin, and so I think that it was more of a commentary on him being called a deviant all of his life and told that he's going to hell for being just the person that he is, and him instead taking that and celebrating it and putting it out there to say like, I'm a person too, and this is who I am, and so I'm going to make something artistic out of the things that, were so deeply ingrained upon me as a child.
I hard agree. I think there's a lot of misplaced outrage over this video, actually. And Lil Nas himself, just as a queer Black man embracing his sexuality, that's what I think of when I think of him, actually. And I get it. Look, when I first watched this, I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, I grew up Catholic. So, interpreted literally, I could see, okay, sure, call him a Satan worshiper if you want, because I've seen a couple of those things being thrown around. But I really doubt his purpose of this music video was to come out as a Satanist. Call me crazy. And honestly, the messaging, at least, is relatable to me as a queer person of color. Our existence, like you said, is oftentimes labeled as deviant. Our very existence. Yeah. And historically, our society, mainstream society anyway, we have our little pockets, but they refuse to legitimize any queer experience. And we're often told we are going to hell for being sinners. I heard that growing up in church at times, too. It's traumatizing. And for me, I'm like, but aren't we all sinners? I don't know anybody who has not sinned and who will not continue to sin. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be gods, Jesus? I don't know what that would look like. So I think oftentimes as queer people, we get singled out and persecuted because it's easy to just say, hey, you're gay, you're a sinner, you're going to hell. And I think this music video, to me, is him saying, the devil has no power, there is no devil, or if there is, we're all devils because we're all sinners. And I'm like on my soapbox here, but my last thing, I just think it's funny that people, especially the conservatives and the Christians and everybody who's getting all up in arms about this music video, they're like demanding he respect their religion because they're calling it sacrilege and blasphemous. You guys are not respecting him, though, his very existence. Right. So why does he owe you that in turn? And it's just this general need to control people to fit into their morality. Yeah. When I feel like people need to take a step back and realize not everybody has the same morals or values. And yet we judge people based on our own morals, expecting them to have those same morals and adhere to them. And it's just not right.
I mean, what I do love about this, I mean, we obviously just had like a little bit of a moment where, you know, we got probably more serious than we typically do, but I love it's sparking conversations like this. I think your average music video is just fucking bullshit on its face, and it's like, I'm not going to call it any names, but people like dancing on a stage or like in a fucking drop top riding down like Beverly Hills Boulevard. Like, that's not cool. We've seen that 20 million times. What I think that nobody can take away from this is that he's created these conversations. He's opened up the door for people to feel however they feel about the content, and like whether it was artistically, you know, visually pleasing, or like what the message is. And so it's really opened up the ability for people to have conversations about some really like deep things, but also like really artistic things. And I think that's an amazing thing to be able to do. And no matter what side of the fence that you stand on, I think, you know, we don't have enough of these artistic moments that allow us to even, you know, really have an opinion, because it's just so like dumb, basically, for lack of better terms.
Right.
But so, I mean, I think, okay, so yes, obviously there are people who didn't agree with the video for a number of reasons, including him, you know, dancing on Satan and riding the stripper pole. I mean, I have to say that I love the moment where he was in like the all blue jean outfit with the blue wig and the acrylics.
I feel like that's gonna be your Halloween look.
When can I get that outfit? So whatever. But so people were obviously all over the spectrum in terms of how they feel about this. But, you know, because he's troll god, his responses are fantastic. At one point, the governor of South Dakota, random, I wonder
where this is going,
couldn't put that on a map, criticizes him and says, and basically said, like, we're in a fight for the soul of our nation. And so he, accurately so, is like, aren't you a governor? Why don't you go fucking do your job? Why are you worried about my music video right now? And worried about sneakers on top of it, which we'll get back to. But, and so he, I mean, some people are also, like, blaming him for kind of negatively impacting our children. And so he says that people need to blame themselves for what their kids have seen, and that it's not his job to raise them ultimately, which I think is a really interesting question, which we cannot get into today because I think there's so much behind it. But
yeah, we'll be here forever.
Truly, like, there's a real fine line between what your job is as a celebrity and an artist, and like how much of a role model are you supposed to be versus just being who you are and putting out the art that you want to put out. Yeah,
and people are allowed to evolve. I get it. He came up on TikTok and younger people, but he's getting older himself. He's coming into his sexuality. He came out not that long ago, 2019. Right. He's only 21 years old. So he's entitled to express himself however he wants. And I think that's what people need to take a step back. And I'll wrap it up and we'll get on with it. But I think people need to remember that. Like, just because you are not okay with this or you wouldn't express yourself this way, look, I'm queer. Would I ever show... I'm not going to ever pole dance, first of all. No one should ever have to see that. And I'm certainly not going to give Satan a lap dance to depict my own experience with my sexuality and my religion. But if he wants to do that, so be it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't control him.
Yeah.
So days after, he says, I spent my entire teenage years hating myself because of the shit y'all preached would happen to me because I was gay. So I hope you are mad. Stay mad. Feel the same anger you teach us to have toward ourselves. And he wanted to open doors for many other queer people to just simply exist and normalize queerness. Like I said, actually, more than the devil part, it's just so queer. I mean, he's really feeling himself. He's getting sexual. And especially, I mean, I'm not black or man, but black queer men have very little room to express their sexuality in an acceptable way, I say in quotation marks, right? I, even as a lesbian, think I have more room to play with my gender than queer men do.
Yeah.
So let him live his freaking life.
Well, he is living his life. Yeah. He is living his life, and basically the same time as the video, he drops, or at least promotes the drop of, sneakers called the Satan shoes with MSCHF. And so they make 666 pairs of this modified sneaker, 666 for
really embracing this
devil/Satan, if you don't know. But so they dropped the 666 pairs, and all of them sell out in only a minute. And so
I was kind of bummed it wasn't 666 seconds. Can I just say that?
I mean, I don't think anybody timed it, but it could have been.
Well, 66 seconds?
I don't know.
All right, go on.
Well, so just for a little context, so basically it is a black Nike Air Max 97, which oddly enough drops basically right after Air Max Day, which I was a super fan of. And Nike. Wore my Air Maxes that day. But so anyways, so this one has just a few modifications.
Just a couple small ones.
Just a couple of changes to Nike's original design. And so basically they've got a bronze pentagram on the top of the laces, and stitched a pentagram into the sole, which is affiliated with Satanism.
The devil himself.
Yep. And then there's an upside down cross.
Also satanic.
Yep. There is Luke 10:18, which is a Bible verse stitched in red on the side. It's not the whole verse. It just says Luke 10:18.
That'd be long.
Yeah. But the verse is basically about Satan falling from heaven. And then on the back of the left shoe, it says MSCHF, I think. On the back of the right, it says Nas X. And so then on top of it all, there is some red ink inserted into the sole of the shoe and a drop of human blood in each sole.
And apparently 6 of the MSCHF employees from, the ones that were putting this together, they drew their blood without doctors. They were like, no, we're not doctors. We just did it. So, and then they put that in the sneaker. So I feel like we're going more for that little bit of shock value here,
It just crosses the line.
Like,
I get shock value. We've obviously seen shock value clothes and sneakers and all of that, but I mean, to put blood in sneakers, it just feels like, why couldn't you just stop at the red ink? Why did you need blood?
Just call it blood in quotation marks.
It's just extra. Like,
this
for what
is
purpose?
dedicate art, I guess. They're going with art, so dedication.
It seems dumb to me.
And I want to note that Nike's white swoosh is still prominently seen on the side and on the top.
Yep.
It's important to note, right? Because it's a black shoe with their red modifications, but in the original shoe, which they kept, is that white swoosh. Pretty obvious. They look like Nikes. They are Nikes because they are.
So these glorious shoes were sold for $1,018 a pair, which is another nod to Luke 10:18. And again, sold out in apparently around a minute, which is, only 666 pairs. So that's quite fast. And as a note, I guess MSCHF previously sold some shoes called the Jesus shoes, which were $14.25
They're non-discriminatory.
Yeah.
They'll do Jesus and
spanning the whole spectrum. And so that one had holy water from the River Jordan in the soles. And it had like Vatican red insoles that were scented with frankincense, and it had a crucifix and a Bible verse stitched in the side. And so we're really just all over the place here.
Nike didn't sue them though. I want to note that.
Yeah. We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that because I think it comes back in. And so basically in connection with this sneaker drop, MSCHF says at some point that Nike was not involved in the process, but whatever they said was not loud and prominent enough, because the next day social media users like flood Nike's page and threaten to boycott Nike over the shoes.
They're not happy.
No, I mean, listen, I get it. I would have some questions. I love Nike, but like, I'm not going to be over here supporting the devil and Satanism. And so people are, saying basically that Nike has crossed the line, and they're now endorsing Satanism. So they're like, we're not like boycott Nike. We're not buying these shoes anymore. It's like a fucking blasphemy.
And Nike's quick to say they don't have a relationship with Lil Nas or MSCHF, right? They go immediately trying to distance themselves from both. More so, they're focusing on MSCHF. They also didn't design or endorse the shoes, which is what you're saying. Like, they sold the shoes, the original shoes, MSCHF bought them and redesigned them, allegedly in collaboration. No, not allegedly, in collaboration with Lil Nas.
Yeah.
I have to note, this is one of my favorite parts, the Church of Satan even distanced themselves from these shoes. They tweeted out from their official Church of Satan Twitter.
Glad they had the Twitter handle.
If anyone's looking, that the shoes have nothing to do with them or Satanism. So it's not even just the Christians. Church of Satan is like, these have nothing to do with us.
Which I thought was hilarious, because I was like, isn't this like your moment to shine? Like,
yeah.
I don't know anybody who's in the Church of Satanism, thank God, but like,
I'm scratching my head like, how
this
bad
feels like
is
your
this?
moment to be like, hey y'all, we exist, come join. Like, we're taking new members, welcome.
No, that's how bad the Church of Satan is. They're like, no, we don't even fucking put blood in our shoes. This bitch is crazy.
Right. Well, so now, after all of this, Nike is suing MSCHF, which is really like an art collective. And so, they made the Satan shoes and the Jesus shoes and some other shoes, but they're suing them specifically for the Satan shoes right now. And so Nike files the lawsuit last week on Monday, accusing MSCHF of trademark infringement over the Satan shoes. And so they're basically worried about confusion and dilution between the shoes that MSCHF made and like Nike's normal sanctioned shoes. And it's worth noting, which I think is super, super interesting, that Lil Nas X was not named in the lawsuit or in the claim. My thought is that it might be because they want to work with him in the future. I think, however you feel about the fucking Montero video, Lil Nas X is, he's creating waves. He's a conversation starter. He's really big in younger generations. And obviously, you know, Nike they're a global conglomerate who wants consumers. So I think that by not naming him, they're probably leaving the path open for like some collaborations and sponsorships down the line.
I think so too, honestly. So Nike ends up asking the court to make MSCHF permanently stop fulfilling orders and to seize the shoes themselves, take them away, so they can't sell them anymore. But MSCHF says they're actually sold out and can't stop them from any unfulfilled orders, which apparently they have shipped all but one.
Which I don't know how do you get 666 shoes out in like 2 days?
Yeah, well, 665. Apparently they were gonna donate that 666. I don't know who to who, but that's what they say. And so Nike's saying that the shoes are unauthorized and causing significant harm to their goodwill.
Yep.
Ready for these legal claims? We're going to break it down. We got Nike's trademark claims. Let's start there.
Okay. So basically there's two claims. There's trademark infringement and trademark dilution. And so trademarks generally are words and phrases and logos and symbols, etc., that are kind of used by producers to, you know, distinguish their product from somebody else's product. And so then trademark infringement is when somebody's use of a product creates kind of a likelihood of confusion or association, or the expectation that their use is authorized by the original trademark owner. And so generally it's worth noting that the more famous the mark, the more protection that you'll get. So something like a Nike or a Google or
Adidas.
Yeah, Adidas.
The three stripes, they like to sue.
I mean, people see the swoosh. People see the three stripes and they know what it is. So the more famous your mark is, the more protection you're going to get. And so Nike's basically saying that consumers could believe that the Satan shoes were authorized by Nike since the swoosh is there. Mm-hmm. And so they're arguing that really only they should have the right to decide what products that the swoosh is on.
Right. And then the other part of this is trademark dilution, which is a concept giving the owner of the trademark the ability to forbid others from using that mark in a way that would lessen its uniqueness. And this is really comprised of two principal harms called blurring and tarnishing. Blurring weakens the distinctiveness of a mark by associating it with a different source. So these are all a lot of words. I like examples. It's as if someone made Google toothpaste. That would be confusing, right? Mm-hmm. We think of Google as this tech search engine. So if someone started making Google toothpaste, that would lessen the way that we would think of Google being associated with tech. Right. Or Toyota aspirin. Toyota we think of as a car company. Mm-hmm. Why would they be making painkiller medication? But that would be, these are examples of blurring. And then tarnishing is harming the mark's reputation by associating it with something untoward. And I think it's pretty clear, but in this case, it would be a brand associated with Satan, for example. Yeah. Mainstream society is not really cool with Satan.
Nope, nor am I.
So neither am I. If we're gonna go there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
I am not part of the Church of Satan.
She definitely follows her Twitter.
No. So what's the harm here? People are calling to boycott Nike. People I saw were threatening to throw away their Nikes, never purchase again. And this could really result in a loss of sales for Nike. Mm-hmm. And in Nike's filing, this was my favorite, they included 2.5 pages of screenshots of people saying they're never buying Nike again, and they're throwing out all of their Nike gear.
I really love that, well, in true 2021 fashion, Instagram screenshots are now proof that you would put in your court filings.
Don't forget Twitter. I think there's some Reddit forums in there, too.
A screenshot? Is that what we're now putting in our court filings?
That's where we're at.
All right,
21st century.
Sure. Okay, so like you said, on the one hand, we've got Nike basically saying that their trademark was infringed upon. There's trademark dilution because, again, the sneakers got the Nike swoosh, and people obviously know what it means. Fine. Mm-hmm. So on the other hand, they're basically preemptively or trying to get ahead of the ball and saying that the first sale doctrine doesn't apply here.
What are you talking about?
I know, I'm sorry. All these big words. So basically, the first sale doctrine allows people or individuals who buy a copyrighted item, whatever that thing is, or, some product, they've got a right to resell it without the creator's permission. So the creator here would be Nike. And so the exception is that courts will often say that if you make material differences to that item, the first sale doctrine doesn't apply, which Nike is trying to, again, preemptively argue. So they're basically saying that if it's not a genuine original thing and you've already materially altered it, and so you're naturally confusing consumers, which...
Right. It's not genuine anymore.
Right.
You changed it.
So they're basically saying that MSCHF, don't even come over here with your bullshit. Don't say that first sale doctrine applies. It does not. You materially altered our goods and consumers are confused.
And that's the big key, right? confusing consumers. We cannot stress that enough.
Right.
Because they want to protect themselves. The whole point of this exception is to prevent sellers from confusing or really deceiving consumers and tarnishing the brand.
Yep. And I think it's worth noting that, obviously, listen, I love sneakers. I am married to a sneakerhead. We literally have multiple closets full of sneakers, which I won't get into today.
Shoe game is on point.
That's great. I've got no closet space, but fine. So resale is obviously super common with sneakers. There's an entire industry built around people who buy sneakers and resell them, and also people who buy sneakers and redesign them and do some custom art to the shoe and resell, like MSCHF basically, who then sells their work online. But that doesn't always mean that it's legal.
A key here is just because this has been done, like you said, this happens a lot. There are whole companies built on customizing and reselling sneakers. It doesn't really necessarily mean it's legal, which I know is crazy because it's so prevalent, but that's the key here. So new design, if creative enough, could be protected by copyright. So it's creative, as we've talked about before. Copyright protects original creative expressions, but that's actually limited to the design itself. It's a whole different issue, the stuff we're talking about, trademark, which is what Nike's upset about. Again, coming back to really just thinking about trademark infringement as confusing people. And that's what's really getting at Nike's lawsuit here. So the weird thing is, and some critics are pointing this out, Nike really hasn't done much about this in the past. Like you said, this has happened many times. People are altering, and they're Nikes. It's not like they're altering other shoes. So why hasn't Nike pursued those actions against them? Why is Nike coming after MSCHF? And indirectly, Lil Nas? I think that it's a couple things, right? They sold 666 pairs of shoes. That's a lot of shoes. Devil number aside, that's a lot of shoes. I think a lot of drops, they're a lot less. And I think because it is so many shoes, it is confusing a lot of people because it's such a massive drop. It's something that would be akin to a Nike drop. The quantity itself speaks to the confusion.
I mean, I think it's also worth noting that, listen, Nike is a brand at the end of the day. They are a brand. They've got a personality. They're also, I think at least quite intentional about the things that they say and the things they put out and the messages that they're kind of relaying to the world. And so I think if somebody else has put out a message that has confused enough of their customers and their consumers, there's probably a valid reason for them to step in at this point and be like, hey, we did not say okay to this. We are not affiliated with this. And they don't really also even take a stand on religion, I feel. Like, I've never seen Nike publish anything that's, like, religion-tied affiliated. And so I think for something to come in that's so really anti-religion, because it's, supporting Satan and all of that, like, it feels fair that this would be the moment when they're like, okay, we can, let the 50 sneaker drops and even some people have done, like, 1,000 sneaker drops, but it hasn't done so much damage to their brand and their reputation that they felt like they had to step in. So I think like you're as a brand as big as Nike, you're not going to get involved in everything that happens. But I think when it's something like this, you've got, probably reason to take a different stance.
I think you're upsetting a lot of people. Look, for better or for worse, we're in the United States. It's a very Christian nation. And I think you're pissing off a lot of people by having your name associated with the devil. And I think that's what really is contributing to the issues here. So what's Nike asking for?
I mean, they're asking for quite a bit here. So they're asking for damages. And so, I mean, we've talked about this before, but basically damages are
compensation
to like make up for what's happened. And so they're asking for 3 types of damages: compensatory, statutory, and punitive, plus a disgorgement of profits in amounts that will like basically be determined at trial. And so to break that down just a little bit, compensatory, again, just means to compensate for injury or loss occurred. Statutory is basically, there are damages that are set in stone by statutes, and statutes or laws or, kind of policy within a state. And so that specifically says that it will set forth an amount for a type of damage, basically. And so in this instance, to be very specific, they're saying trademark infringement. And so basically trademark infringement could set you back anything between like $1,000 and $200,000 for each infringing item sold.
Right. And that's the key here, because here, okay, first of all, for people, take a step back. People are going to throw everything they can when trying to get damages, right? You're going to throw all these claims, right? Nike's arguing all these different ways because they don't know what's going to win or lose in court. So they're throwing everything at MSCHF, really. They're saying trademark infringement, trademark dilution, for sale doctrine doesn't apply. And now we're just going to throw the whole book at you, all these damages. So statutory is important because you don't have to actually show damages.
Right.
That's the key, right? The statute just says trademark infringement. If you prove trademark infringement, automatic X amount of dollars.
Right.
And the court will determine that. And the big thing here, I think, why Nike's trying to get this one too, if they can prove that there's trademark infringement willfully, the court may award up to $2 million each for each infringing item. That's a big amount.
A ton of money.
And again, you don't have to show actual damages.
Right.
So really, I think they're sending a message, which bleeds into the next type of damage, punitive. Mm-hmm. These are basically punishment, punitive punishment damages. This is kind of the FU for effing us over.
Right.
I don't know why I'm saying that, like I don't like saying the word, but fuck you for fucking us over. And they can award however much money they want. And by they, I mean the court,
right,
for whatever happened. Mm-hmm. It's like an egregious kind of moral thing. And then the last one, disgorgement of profits. Basically, they want all the profits from MSCHF, from these shoes. That's what they're looking for.
Give us all your money, MSCHF.
Everything.
Well, so on top of the money portion, they're also asking for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. And so a temporary restraining order basically is an order by the court stopping a certain action. And so typically they're only given or granted when there's a threat of like an irreparable harm that'll occur if the court doesn't immediately step in to issue this order. So temporary restraining orders also only last until a preliminary injunction hearing, which is usually like a few weeks later, where all of the parties have time to like prepare their arguments and at least put forth like their initial thoughts or defenses or whatever the case is.
So a preliminary injunction is essentially the same thing. What Nicole just broke down for the temporary restraining order, same thing. It's going to stop the person from taking an action and just preserve whatever the status quo is, right? The key difference between these two, really think of it as a timing thing. So temporary restraining order allows the court to quickly step in and stop something until a hearing has happened, like Nicole said. The preliminary injunction comes later, which allows that to continue until the end of the trial, until everybody has fleshed out all the facts. So really the key, just know that Nike basically just wants the court to step in and prevent MSCHF from selling any more shoes, from shipping them out. And these are just two very legalese ways of having that happen.
Right. And so MSCHF's response to all of this, all 500 claims from Nike and all the money requests and the temporary restraining order, et cetera, is basically saying that, there's the First Amendment freedom of expression argument, which is basically just saying, we've got a right to express our creative thoughts or to interest via the shoe, et cetera. And so they're asking the court to use this thing called the Rogers test, which basically is just a test for resolving disputes when it comes to First Amendment issues and trademark restrictions. And so obviously courts have an interest in protecting the use of trademarks just generally, but they also have an interest in protecting them if it's used in a creative expression because it's seen as free speech.
Freedom of speech.
Right. And so they're basically saying that you can only sue on a trademark claim if either one, the use of the trademark has no artistic relevance to the underlying work, which would be the sneaker here, or two, if the use of the trademark has some artistic relevance, but it explicitly misleads as to like the source or the content of the work.
And so I think number one is tough. I think because the Nike swoosh doesn't seem relevant to the Satan shoe, right? Mm-hmm. It could have been an Adidas shoe. It could have been Skechers.
Right.
There was nothing particular about the Nike swoosh that needed to be there to get his Satan shoe across. Mm-hmm. And the second point I think is tough too, given that Nike is so well known.
Right.
So I think it could mislead. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think MSCHF is basically arguing that, like, these are individual works of art that were sold to collectors since each shoe was just one out of 666, and they weren't, like, thousands. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that somehow, just like the Jesus shoes, these will be in artistic collections and museums. I'm not sure how they're just deciding arbitrarily that these shoes will be in museums, and I would be curious as to what fucking museum is trying to house these shoes, but... Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. There's other ways to express yourself artistically. You didn't have to use Nike shoes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Nike symbol. I think they're capitalizing on Nike's popularity.
Yeah.
And they're also saying no dilution. No one's confused. They said MSCHF. We never said we were affiliated with Nike. We're MSCHF. We're in collaboration with Lil Nas X. Where's Nike? Who's Nike?
Right.
And they're also saying that no one's confused. Their customers aren't, because their customers are sophisticated. Because apparently to purchase these shoes, they had to use some proprietary app to buy them. So they're saying no one would have thought that they were buying Nike from Nike when they had to go in our special app to buy these shoes.
I just don't know how this is going to hold, given that like the average consumer responded by going to Nike's Instagram and Twitter and being like, I'm boycotting Nike. So clearly, like,
I think there's some confusion.
Maybe your buyers were super sophisticated, but the average person was maybe not sophisticated enough to like flesh out that that Nike's not involved and it's just MSCHF.
And yeah, it's not limited. The confusion is not limited to whoever bought the infringing trademark shoe. It's harm to your reputation.
Exactly.
And then lastly, it's a bit of that copyright I was talking about with the design. They're trying to say, hey, look, our pentagram, all this red blood, it's so unique. It's a parody, fair use defense, right? Fair use defense speaks to copyright. So they're saying we intended to criticize the popular collab culture where brands like Nike will collaborate with anyone just to make a splash. I don't know. Again, I think that there are other ways to do this that would make them a stronger argument. The huge mitigating factor against this argument, I think, is they sold for a profit, which when you sell for a profit and you make money off of it, it tarnishes the strength of this fair use argument.
I mean, on top of the fact that it's really not clear to me at all how making a Satan shoe criticizes collab culture. Like, you did a collaboration with Lil Nas X. So you did a collaboration, but you're criticizing collaborations. Like, that feels like the flimsiest argument for this being like a fair use defense.
I more think that if you wanted to make fun of collab culture, because I remember reading it was like something to do with like an iced tea company and like a shoe, and they're like, why would an iced tea company sync up with a shoe or something like that?
But you're a sneaker company doing a collab for a sneaker with somebody who's into sneakers.
If anything, you'd have to be like, oh, we collabed with the devil himself. Like, that's what I would see, not with like a rapper or an artist, right? That would be the parody, right? If they were joking that they collabed with the devil. I don't know.
Makes no sense. Well, and I think it's also worth noting that after all of this has unfolded, Nike explicitly kind of left open the possibility that they would add the Jesus shoe into their court filing. I think,
to be fair,
I think they're a little pissed off, and they're like, we're throwing everything in that we can get of you guys. Yeah. Like, fuck you for doing this.
I wonder if people will be mad at that.
I mean, I don't think maybe consumers wouldn't be as mad. It doesn't seem like that one had nearly as much attention. Like, I never heard about this. Not that I'm a sneaker person necessarily, but again, I live with a sneakerhead. There was no conversation in my household about the Jesus shoe, so I wonder if that one got as much attention. And I also don't know that they collabed with anybody, whereas like they obviously collabed with Lil Nas X, who's massive, and so I think it definitely created more waves for the Satan shoe for 5 million reasons than the Jesus shoe did.
Which that kind of speaks to the morality of things, right? I think that so many companies do this. Why pick MSCHF? It's kind of what we talked about. I do agree. I think that the Jesus shoe versus the Satan shoe has a different connotation. I think it's all funny, but I think it mainly comes down to public perception and what people are comfortable with and what people aren't comfortable with. And the one thing I have to say is all these churches and conservatives and all these different people denouncing his music video and even the shoes, but they're not fighting against racism, homophobia, sexism. That is the one thing that I'll say is, look, if you're going to get up in arms about this, fine. But also get up in arms about real things that are happening every day to people in the queer culture. Maybe take a step back and go, well, what about my religion is making this guy feel isolated and the rest of the queer community? That's the one thing that I would love to say. And the other last thing is that this isn't the only time people have kind of synced up with the devil, I'll say, to get their message across. Horror movies, there's plenty of demonic ghost possession movies out there. There's even other artists who have done kind of similar sacrilegious imagery. Madonna, DMX, Marilyn Manson. So, but I feel like everyone's really upset by this. Again, I have to say, in part, I think it's worsened because he's a queer black man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's an interesting time to kind of take this stance around the sneaker battle when, again, there's like $1 million business. Especially, I think it's particularly sensitive kind of given what's happening societally with LGBTQ communities and laws, especially with like Mississippi and Tennessee and all this shit coming out this week, and, you know, the Vatican saying that they won't bless same-sex unions. And so I think that Nike has kind of found the balance in saying that, well, first of all, let me just say that I think they're completely justified in bringing this suit. Like, I think it's, when I first saw the sneaker drop, I'm not going to lie, I was like, oh, this is interesting for Nike. Like, wasn't expecting this. So I think of myself as fairly sophisticated, at least in some things. And so I was surprised that they would do that. So maybe I'm the average consumer that they're talking about. But I think I think that they struck a good balance of being like, listen, this is not about what Lil Nas is talking about. This is not about his video. This is not about who he is. It's just about the fact that, like, so many of our consumers and buyers thought that we were endorsing Satan by making this sneaker. So I think they've got a really strong claim. I think they'll probably be pretty successful going forward. MSCHF
TBD.
that has a little bit of they've got some things to work through.
But I will say that this will be a pretty landmark case. We'll see what happens, because this could change the way that customized sneakers are thought about. And
I actually don't think it will change that much.
You don't think so?
No. I think that this is a one-off case, and it's just given how bad the Satan shoe was. I mean, both visually, I think it was ugly, but also, like, the message that it stood for. So I don't really think that Nike's going to keep picking up these battles every time somebody draws a cartoon in their sneaker and resells it.
All right, we'll just have to see. So where do things stand now? What's up?
Well, so Lil Nas X posted a video on YouTube called Lil Nas X Apologizes for Satan Shoe. That is literally the title.
That sounds sweet.
Mid-apology, he cuts to a scene from his music video and jokes that he's going to drop a Chick-fil-A version of the shoe with John 3:16.
Did you love those? Because you love Chick-fil-A.
I mean, listen.
I'll buy you them.
I'm growing apart from Chick-fil-A. I've seen the error in my ways. But this is just another troll from him.
They're a little better now.
Thank you. And he also posts a meme from SpongeBob, basically, of him being Squidward in a box, broke and begging for change because of the Nike lawsuit.
That was funny. And then, okay, Nike. Last week, a federal judge stepped in and stopped the sneakers from being sold. They granted that temporary restraining order that we talked about. So I don't know if that will even do anything, since apparently they've shipped most of the sneakers. And they sold out in 60 seconds. So we'll see. I think that was more probably just a message they wanted to get across. And I think, like we talked about, Nike will probably win on some of these claims at least.
Yeah.
In other news, Miley Cyrus took a picture wearing the shoes. So there's that.
Super fun.
So it sounds like he still has the Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah.
And the Miley
the
Cyrus.
Yeah, the Cyrus family. The Cyrus family
I was
behind
like,
him.
Ray Cyrus? What's their last name? Hannah Montana?
So watching that strand unfold in your mind. And then, like, a just quick note, apparently the inspiration for his video kind of came from an FK Twigs video. And there was a little drama around that because I guess he didn't originally know, and so people pointed it out. But I guess they talked it out and didn't seem to cause any drama, and they both kind of thanked each other for the messages that they were trying to convey in their video. So I think, listen, again, just to make it brief, I think there was some artistic value and some conversations to be had around the video, but I think the sneaker portion of things was maybe a bit much, and MSCHF
Took a turn.
MSCHF is going to be in some hot water for a little bit.
All right, so what's our moral of the story? What do you got for people?
Mine would be don't fuck with Lil Nas X on Twitter, and don't
fair.
fuck with Nike in real life.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to say that if you want to customize sneakers and mass sell them, let's dissociate ourselves from Satan a little bit. Maybe we'll go with like a pagan god or somebody who's like more comfortable. Like maybe go Egyptian.
Hercules.
We could do, maybe, who's the Greek? Was it Hades?
I don't know.
Is that different? Would people feel differently? Like Zeus? Maybe we did like a Hercules. Yeah, we could do that.
Options.
Maybe people would care less. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Legally Judgy. We hope you enjoyed listening to us talk as much as we love the sound of our own voices.
If you did, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Also, feel free to connect with us on our socials at Legally Judgy. Until next time.
Bye.